Or Alex is doing that.
I just added a
Here we go.
What about Commissioner Sherman? I don't see him yet, and there's a 248 number that I think is public.
Commissioner Sherman will be absent tonight. I got an email from him. He's traveling.
Okay. Okay, are we ready?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Birmingham City Commission meeting of September 21st, 2020 to order. Would you please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic
which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Boutros,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Long,
Here.
Commissioner Ballard,
Here.
Commissioner Hoff,
Here.
Commissioner Host,
Here.
Commissioner Nikita, Commissioner Sherman absent. Let's unmute Commissioner Nikita.
Here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. With that, we go to proclamations, congratulatory resolutions, awards, appointments, resignation and confirmations, excuse me, administration of oath, introduction of guests and announcements. We have a few announcements tonight. As a reminder, the clerk's office would like to remind voters to turn in an absentee ballot application if they wish to vote by mail for the November 3rd, 2020 general election. The clerk's office will begin mailing the ballots to voters by the end of September. To review your specific voting information and preview your ballot, you can visit mi.gov/vote. Also, a new drop box will be installed soon. And I just heard that maybe it'll arrive tomorrow, but it will take some time, few days to be installed. And that would be near the police driveway gate on the Henrietta side of City Hall. Please stay tuned for more information. Also, as a reminder, the Birmingham Museum will be featuring an outdoor pop-up exhibit this Friday, the 25th, from 1 to 4 p.m. In the plaza at 556 West Maple Road. Historical artifacts of Birmingham women who achieved many local political firsts will be presented with a National Archives display on the nationwide suffrage movement. The exhibit is free to the public. Please remember that mask and social distancing will be required for close examination of the artifacts and conversation with the museum staff. Last announcement for tonight, but not least, our city in general, most of staff and the whole city would like to thank Ms. Jane McKee for her 20 years of service to Birmingham on the Martha Baldwin Park Board. Thank you so much. With that, that will conclude our announcement for tonight. And we'll go next on to the next item on our agenda, which is open to the public for matters not on the agenda. If you should have the public, any comment, please raise your hand so I can see that your hand is raised so I can give you the floor. Do I see any public? I don't see any. All right. We move on with our business agenda. And the next one is consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and it will be enacted by one motion and approved by a roll call vote. There'll be no separate discussion of the items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered under the last item of new business. We will start with our commissioners. Commissioners, would you like to remove any item on the consent agenda for discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Long.
Yes, thank you. Item A.
Item A. Long. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Baller, did you raise your hand?
No, no.
Okay. Commissioner Hoff, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to remove item G.
Item G by Commissioner Huff. Any other items to be pulled by the commissioners? Seeing none. Any other items to be pulled by the public from the consent agenda? I see none. Okay. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Huff, go ahead, please.
I move approval of the consent agenda with the withdrawal of items A and G.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Nikita. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Hall,
Yes,
Commissioner Nikita,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Baylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Host,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman is absent, Mayor Boutros.
Yes. Thank you, Alex. Commissioners, would you like to go ahead and discuss those couple items as we're going?
yes,
All right, let's go with the first item pulled by Mayor Pro Tem Long, item A. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Boutros. I just have some minor corrections to the minutes, which is item A. On page 11, the item is legal services. The first line in the second paragraph, I believe I suggested reviewing the 1956 agreement. And then I have an additional correction on page 14. The item is ordinances.
Mayor Pro Tem Long, Alex, are you good with the first correction?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Long.
Thank you. On page 14 of the minutes, the item is ordinances. The third paragraph, second line, have discussion. It says setbacks and noise, but what I actually said was heights and setbacks.
Okay, we'll review the recording and make corrections as needed.
Thank you. And with that, I would move item A.
Second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Host. Any discussion from the public? Commissioners? Do I see a hand? Mr. Bloom, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Yes, in the last meeting, I asked during the consent agenda item for approving the meeting minutes that the meeting minutes be corrected to provide more than just a description that I made a comment about personal attacks. In the new minutes from last week's meeting, it just said that David asked for a correction, or Mr. Bloom asked for a correction on personal attacks, but it didn't say what the correction was. So I would like either my original comments or my comments from last week entered into the record, please. It can be done briefly, but just saying that I made a comment about personal attacks really doesn't tell anybody anything and doesn't leave a record about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Comment on the motion? None? Will the clerk please take the roll call?
Mayor Pro Tem Long,
Yes.
Mr. Host,
Yes.
Mr. Baller,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
yes,
Commissioner Nikita,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman absent, Mayor Boutros.
Yes. Thank you, Clerk. Now we move to item G, pulled by Commissioner Hop. Commissioner Hop, the floor is yours.
This has to do with the sewer lining program that has been in effect for quite a few years now. And I have some very specific questions. The first is we are approving Granite Inliner LLC, and they have not worked with the city in recent years. And yet this program, we have had segments of the sewer lining project done in 2017 and 2019. So my first question is, who did the work in those 2 years?
Mr. Fletcher, are you there? Austin? We'll give you the floor. You may go ahead and answer the question, please, Mr. Fletcher. I see.
Yes, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yes. Alonzo Technologies did the project, the previous year's project.
In both 2017 and 2019.
2019, I believe that was Gary. That was a small segment, if I'm correct, over on Oak Street.
And so why didn't either of those firms, or did they get involved, or they didn't bid?
No, neither one bid. And it's my understanding that Alonzo Technology no longer works in the state of Michigan anymore.
Oh, okay. And the other one that did the 2019, it was a very small segment.
Yes, it was a small segment.
Yeah, so maybe this was too big for them. Okay. Then my question on this is, $500,000 was budgeted for this project, and the work is totaling $764,000. So we are approving the whole $764,000, yet there are 7 properties that have not granted an easement. So why are we allocating the money in advance when we don't have those 7 properties granting an easement?
Because we're very hopeful that those segments, there's only one easement per segment. And we wanted to get a contractor on board to do those if we got the easements. And we're very hopeful that once we start the work, we'll be out there more often and we might be able to make contact with them and get those easements. And if we don't get them, then we just won't do those segments.
Okay, so then that money, the extra, whatever it is, 264,000 won't be spent. Because tonight, what we are approving, we already have 500,000 budgeted for this project. We're approving an additional 264,000.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So we've been doing this for at least 3 years, but I think longer. We've been discussing it. What's the holdup on the 7 segments that
They're basically not responding. We're sending out mailers, we're going knocking on doors, and as far as I know, they have not responded. Whether they just ignoring our correspondence or what. Well,
a segment is usually a block.
No,
No?
Commissioner, there's about 3 segments per block. We're calling a segment between manholes.
Okay. So how many properties is that usually? 2?
Let's see. Give me 1 second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. About 25 properties, about 2 dozen, give or take.
Oh, so how many are holding up? The ones that you don't have approval, how many properties? Is it usually, is it just 1 or is it more than 1?
It is basically 1 per segment. And there's 2 properties that butt the segment. I mean, there's a rear yard, so obviously you got to get them on both sides. It's one homeowner on per segment. And the segments are about 350 to 400 feet long.
Okay. Well, I just want to encourage the city to get those approvals. I mean, and if it takes going in person, that's what I think should be done.
That is our plan, Commissioner. We're going to put a hard press on here in the next couple of months to get these other easements obtained and try to stress on them the importance that we rely on this sewer because of the age and where it's located.
Right, and it affects more than just that property. It affects quite a few other properties.
Correct. Correct.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I think
There
there
is-
is another question.
Yeah, 1 second, Commissioner Hop. Thank you. Commissioner Host, go ahead, please.
This is not a question. I just want to share that Austin explained to me these liners are guaranteed for 50 years. This is a wonderful deal, particularly for Court and Lake Estates.
Thank you, Commissioner Host. Would you comment any other, go ahead, Commissioner Ballard?
Yeah, for Mr. Fletcher, just a suggestion that the homeowners who have signed, who may not get the work done because one homeowner, perhaps they should be enlisted to help. I know if it were me and you told me that that guy over there, was holding up the train, I'd be knocking on that guy's door myself.
That's certainly a tactic we can take. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. It's been an ongoing process. I've been involved in this since the beginning, but thank you, Mr. Fletcher. With that, Commissioner Hoff, go ahead.
I'll move the suggested resolution to award the 2020 sewer lining program to Granite Inliner for the amount of $764,031.
Second.
And seconded by Commissioner Host. Any comment on the motion by the commission? See none? Any by the public on the motion? I see none. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Hawk,
Yes.
Commissioner Host,
Yes.
Commissioner Nikita,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman absent, Mayor Pro Tem Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Baylor,
Yes.
Mayor Boutros.
Yes, thank you, clerk. With that, we move on to unfinished business, and we have none. Next item on our business on the agenda is new business. Item A, we have a resolution to meet in closed session to discuss labor negotiations in accordance with Section 8C of the Open Meeting Act.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoff.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Nikita. A roll call vote is required and the vote must be approved by a 2/3 majority of the commission. Do we have any discussion on the motion? None. By the commission? None. By the public? None. With that, go ahead, please, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Hoff,
Yes.
Commissioner Nikita,
Yes.
Commissioner Host,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman is absent, Mayor Pro Tem Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Baylor,
Yes.
Mayor Boutros.
Yes, thank you, Alex. And just for the public, please stay tuned. We will be convening right now to close session, and we will be back shortly. Thank you.
Don't forget to join the closed session.
All right. I see everybody muted, but can you hear me? They can, okay. Awesome. Say that again. Okay, welcome back. And now we go to under item B, under new business. We have a resolution to approve the settlement agreement of September 4th, 2020 between the city and the Birmingham Police Officers Association / the Police Officers Association of Michigan for a renewal of the collective bargaining agreement through June 30th, 2022. And further to authorize the transfer of the appropriate funds by the Finance Department for the contract effective July 1st, 2019. I do believe, is that Mr. Myers on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The bargaining team is pleased to bring forward to the commission the 3-year settlement agreement with the Birmingham Police Officers Association. It is a 3-year agreement from July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2022. The agreement calls for a 2% wage adjustment in the first year and 1.5% wage adjustments in each of years 2 and 3. There's a modest adjustment in the second year to reflect internal equity and an increase in the skills certification premium beginning in the second year. The agreement also includes increased health insurance deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums and higher prescription and emergency room copays. I also want to mention that this agreement contains a joint statement on social injustice. I believe it's the first such statement in a contract for the Police Officers Association of Michigan in the state of Michigan, and it may possibly be the first such language in any police contract in the state. And with the Commission's indulgence, I'd like to read that statement that the parties agreed to. This is a joint statement on social injustice. The parties affirm that racism, bigotry, prejudice, and social intolerance have no place in our society or in the law enforcement profession. To earn and maintain the trust of the entire community, which is a necessary and basic prerequisite for policing, law enforcement must consistently hold itself to the highest standards of ethical conduct and take action when those standards are not met. Police misconduct will not be tolerated, and the parties pledge to work together to minimize the potential for misconduct through appropriate training, reviews, and communication of policies, adoption of best practices, and the commitment to an ongoing dialogue to ensure that the principles of social justice, fairness, respect, transparency, dignity, and security for all remain in the forefront of departmental culture and community engagement. And with that, Mr. Mayor, the bargaining team would recommend that the commission approve the settlement of agreement of September 4th, 2020 between the city and the POAM for a renewal of the collective bargaining agreement through June 30, 2022, and further to authorize the transfer of the appropriate funds by the Finance Department for the contract effective July 1, 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Questions, motion? Thank you for a wonderful letter, a wonderful statement. Go ahead, Commissioner Hoff.
I'd like to move the suggested resolution to approve this.
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Long. Okay, any comment? Go ahead, Commissioner, comment on the motion.
Did you call on me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I'd also like to compliment both Mr. Myers, Mr. Valentine, and the officers involved, the bargaining unit, the people who were involved representing them, including this statement. And as you said, we may be one of the first cities to have a statement like this in our contract. And I think that that is significant. So thank you for your hard work. And I'm very proud to be involved with Birmingham with a statement like this.
Well said, Commissioner Hoff. Thank you. We echo every word she said. Any other comment on the motion from the commission? Seeing none, any from the public on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll? Can't hear you, Alex.
Commissioner Hoff,
Here we go.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Nikita,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman is absent, Commissioner Baylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Host,
Yes.
Mayor Boutros.
Yes, thank you, clerk. With that, we go to item C under new business. We have a resolution to approve the recommendation by our Human Resource Department. And I don't have to read all that. It's to implement a increase in salary table adjustment in the 2021. So with that, Mr. Myers on that too?
Yes. Thank you. Oh, thank you,
Yeah, go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor. Yeah, thank you. So before the commission this evening is the 2021 compensation recommendations for the approximately 35 department head and administrative management staff who aren't represented by a labor organization. Salary adjustments for this group are determined through annual performance evaluations, and the HR department is recommending a continuation of our established methodology, which consists of a 2% market-based across-the-board salary table adjustment that's in line with our other employee groups, and a merit-based component that includes in-salary performance adjustments for high-quality performers and a one-time lump sum performance increment of up to 2% for those high performers who are at or near their salary range maximum. And I would note for the commission's benefit that the lump sum performance increment is not part of base salary, and that our current year's budget includes funding for those compensation adjustments. We would ask the commission to approve the suggested resolutions to first implement the 2% salary table adjustment based upon performance for full-time and part-time employees in the department head and administrative management classifications effective July 1, 2020. Second, to implement the 2% performance increment through June 30, 2021, with eligibility to be in accordance with the recommended merit increase guidelines. Third, to approve the recommended employee healthcare cost sharing measures effective January 1, 2021. And last, to approve the transfer of the necessary funds by the finance department to the respective departmental personnel accounts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. That's the reason I didn't read all the resolutions, as you clearly stated very well. With that, commissioners, questions for Mr. Myers? Discussions? Entertain a motion? From the public, before we take the motion, any questions to Mr. Myers from the public? Mr. Bloom. Do I see a hand? Oh, Mr. Bloom, go ahead, please. Mr. Bloom, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I can, as an employee at Ford, I can say that everybody had their merit increases postponed for 6 months due to COVID. Also at Ford, the merits and the performances are all combined. They're not done separately as the city is doing. And I would just, I'm concerned, and I would ask, is there an opportunity for us to get given the $1 million hit to the parking that we're taking this year, and other revenue issues to the city and everyone needing to tighten their belts? I would ask if it's necessary to implement this right now. I understand we want good staff and we want to make sure that they're rewarded for doing what they do. I don't think anyone lost their jobs during this, and that's a good thing. And I just think we ought to be look at trying to be fiscally prudent and responsible while still trying to take care of our employees. And we should be looking at delaying this, I believe, right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Any other public? See none? Commissioners? Commissioner Nikita?
Yes, I'll move suggested resolution item C, which includes the 4 interrelated included resolutions.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Hoff, is it?
I did, but someone else did too.
Yeah, I didn't see the someone else. Let's do Commissioner Hoff as a second. With that, any comment on the motion from the commissioners? See none? Any from the public? I see none. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Nikita,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoff,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman is absent. Mayor Pro Tem Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Baylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Host,
Yes.
Mayor Boutros.
Yes, thank you, Alex. With that, we go to our next item at D under new business. We have a presentation on public engagement platform. And I do believe we have our management intern, Miss Melissa Furbain with us.
Hi, good evening. So at the July 13th, 2020 commission meeting, the commission asked for research into public engagement platforms that could be used to engage residents in the governmental decision-making process here in Birmingham. I have prepared a quick presentation with examples of several platforms for you this evening.
Okay. Are we sharing your screen, Melissa? Yeah.
Yes, it should be at this time, correct?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Brain. Go ahead.
Great. So public, just 1 second, please. Sorry. Okay, so public engagement platforms are designed to bring citizens into the decision-making process. They are used for many types of projects that cities conduct, such as master planning, parks and recreation planning, infrastructure projects, so in the planning stages of infrastructure projects, and then creating or modifying city policy. So common features of these are pinnable maps, polls, forums, surveys, idea boards, project timelines, and staff contact information. We can talk a little bit more about those when we get to the examples. I evaluated 5 firms in detail who do these public engagement platforms. Those firms were Bang the Table with their engagementHQ platform, Place Speak, citizenlab, Thought Exchange, and MetroQuest. And here's what I found. For the most common features were forums, idea boards that allowed residents to share any ideas that they had with their city, maps where residents could pin ideas or feedback to a specific location, polls, surveys, staff contact, so you knew if it were the planning department was running this project or DPS, just depending on the scope of the project. And project timelines. So that would give residents and other people who are viewing it just an idea of, you know, where the city was in the project. Were they just gathering ideas? Was the project about to be implemented or nearing completion? Of the 5 firms that I looked at, Bang the Table, Place Speak, and citizenlab offered all of those features. Thought Exchange offered fewer. They didn't have a mapping feature or the staff contact or the project timeline. And that's because they weren't really designed for a municipal environment. They could be used in such an environment, but they weren't designed for one. And then MetroQuest didn't have the forums, idea boards, the project timelines, or the staff contacts. And that's because MetroQuest was very geared toward transit projects. So all of their features heavily work toward transit. Of all of these firms, two really offered the most features, also in very attractive and user-friendly format. Table, EngagementHQ, and citizenlab. PlaceSpeak offered the same tools, but in a pretty user-unfriendly format. You had to navigate fully using a map, and the city would not have its own URL that contained all of this project information. So looking first at Bing the Table, they do, as I said, polls to residents, surveys, forums, idea boards, maps. They had a stories feature, so that could be very useful perhaps to the Birmingham Museum as a way of gathering just stories, things that our residents want to share about the city of Birmingham. A guest book where residents can leave their feedback, and Q&A. So the Q&A allows residents to ask detailed questions about a project and get detailed answers all in one place from the department who's working on the project. On the screen, you'll see an example of a project overview page, and this comes from Mercer Island, Washington. And you can see how the city of Mercer Island set out what their project was, and then they offered a timeline. And as the project moved through, as the city moved through that project, they could show that progress on the timeline. To the right, we have an example, oops, I apologize. They have an example of the maps feature, which they call Places. And this project was done by the city of Edina, Minnesota. And before they started a major road construction project, they wanted to learn more about backyard flooding in a particular neighborhood. So they used the map feature to allow residents to pin where their home was roughly and give information about backyard floods that they had had. And this information was compiled and taken in front of their boards when they were making decisions about the project. Another example of the Places function being used, this was for a park master plan in the main park for the city of Mercer Island, Washington. And again, people dropped pins on the map. They were able to say what they use that specific section of the park for, or what they would like to use a specific section of the park for, and offer feedback that was tied to a location. On the right is another example from Edina, Minnesota, and this is an example of the Q&A section. So a resident reached out to the city with their question, and the city's department answered them with detailed and factual answers that not only did the resident who asked the question got to see, but any other resident who was interested could see it as well. On the back end for EngagementHQ, so how this would look to our departments, there's data management. The city would own the data collected, demographic analysis, and that was really used as a way, if you can learn that you've done a great job reaching 25 to 45-year-olds, but maybe you didn't reach 45 to 55-year-olds. So it was a way for the city to see that the information about this project was who it was getting to, who is reaching, as a way to try to bring others into the fold. Response clustering is the program itself would allow you to see, if you just open for general comments, it would allow you to see that most of those general comments were about parks or about sewers or about roads. So it would help with that data tabulation. Comment analysis would give the city an idea if the general feeling behind the comments were positive, negative, or neutral. Now, of course, you would read them in detail as well, but it was a way to quantify that. They offer auto moderation for spam. Anybody who's been on an internet platform has seen spam. So Being the Table really tries to cut that down. And then they also have moderators who are contract employees. So it's actual person moderators who, look for people who are going against the terms of use for the program. All right. citizenlab really offers pretty much all of those same features. citizenlab is based in Belgium, and many of their clients are also based in other parts of Europe. So to find examples for you, it was hard to find them in English, but so the front end, they offer polls, surveys, forums, idea boards, pinnable maps, what they call stories. Again, a way of gathering personal experiences with the city, a guest book, questions and answers. They also have citizen proposals. So using their platform, citizens would be able to propose a new policy or a new park using it. And then a budgeting game. The budgeting game is pretty interesting. It allows residents to really show their priorities through making trade-offs as they allocate a certain amount of money to a project. So as we know, when you're planning a park, not every single apparatus that somebody wants can be purchased. So it allowed residents to say, I'd rather the city invest in pickleball courts over a jungle gym or however residents felt. This is an example of a citizenlab site with the city of Brussels, Belgium. And it is an example of residents offering ideas to the city and then others being able to upvote with those thumbs up if they liked the ideas or comment on them. This is another citizenlab example. This is Vancouver, Canada. And in this example, citizens use the map feature to pin ideas about what their thoughts were on empty homes taxes. So they were able to see if residents in certain areas of the city felt differently than others about the proposed empty homes tax. citizenlab offers many of the same backend features for the cities with the data management, the demographic analysis, the response clustering, the comment analysis, and they offer auto moderation for spam, but unlike Being the Table, they did not have the contractor moderators. And their dashboard looks slightly different, but truly offers pretty much the same features. Looking at the cost related to implementing this type of platform for the city of Birmingham, Being the Table is about $13,000 a year for an annual subscription. The subscription would get the city an unlimited amount of projects that we could run these engagement projects through, programs through, and its own URL. So it could be something like "Speak Up Birmingham" or, "Let us know what you think, Birmingham." However, it was, decided to be formatted. And then, in addition, $1,900 onboarding fee. citizenlab, same format. It would be a $9,500 annual subscription. And again, unlimited projects that we would be able to do with, a City of Birmingham citizenlab website that we could link to on our own bhamgov.org site. And that has a one-time $2,400 onboarding fee. So at this time, if anybody has any questions, I know that when we were reviewing them, that the planning director, Jana Eckert, reviewed the platforms with me, and she has ideas about how the planning department may want to implement one of these if the commission decides that you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Furban. I'll open up for discussion or questions from the commission to Ms. Furban, unless Ms. Acker also, do you want to add something before we take the questions?
No, I don't really have anything to add other than Melissa and I did talk, and we do agree that those are the top two public engagement software systems that are out there. I have to say that I am a little bit more inclined towards Bang the Table, frankly, just because it has moderators that are always online, always going through and looking. So if somebody puts something inappropriate, it'll be taken down immediately, which is kind of a nice upsell. They all have the same features at the front end and the back end. Plus, I do like the way they're laid out. It's very easy to follow for people that are new to using the technology.
Great, thank you, Ms. Acker. Yeah, so Commissioner, so we'll pursue the conversation as there's no action on the item tonight, but this is more of a questions and discussions more further to see if there's a potential to have something like that in the future in Birmingham and see if we can bring it back. Commissioner Baller, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. Good report. Did you talk to, I have numerous questions, so if you'll indulge me, Mayor.
Sure.
May I address Melissa directly?
Go ahead, address me, and then well, I'll have her answer right away.
Okay. I wonder a few things. Did we talk to any cities that use these platforms?
Yes. So I reached out to Mercer Island and in Washington, and then also Edina, Minnesota. And both of them had very, very positive responses to their experience with Bang the Table. I selected those cities because out of the examples of clients from Bang the Table, those were the most similar communities to Birmingham. In both cases, the people who reached out to me said that they had a great experience and that it was, once they got it going, it was very valuable to them, and it actually was not as time consuming as they expected. I was unable to get a hold of anyone who used citizenlab, and I think that's because they were much larger cities, Vancouver, Washington, Brussels, Belgium. There's a lot more city employees, and it's harder to get to someone.
Mm-hmm. So some of the questions that I might have for someone who's used it, maybe you ask these questions. Who in the city sort of manages it? Is it the department heads who are working on the projects that are that they're covering, or is there a communications person who does it? So that's one thing. In terms of promoting it and getting the ball rolling, like you alluded to, once it was up and running. So how much effort does it take to get these things up and running? How long does it take? Are we looking at 1 year, 2 years, 5 years before the community really catches on?
I can't speak to how long it would take the community to catch on, but from speaking with the representatives from those companies, it's about a 6 to 10 week process between starting your relationship with the company and having your site ready to go. And that includes training for the departments that would be using it. So if, in our case, if it was like Jana and her planning department and Lauren Wood and DPS, who we expected to be using it, there would be training offered to them in the platforms, as well as, perhaps like the communications director or the staff would be most likely to use it.
Commissioner Baller, may I open it to other commissioners and then I'll come back to you if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead. Commissioner Hoff.
Yes, one of the comments that you made, Melissa, was that it can collect demographic information.
Mhm.
My question is, how does it do that? Do the residents have to register and provide some personal information in order for it to collect demographic information?
Yes, so that would be the only information it can collect is the information that was provided by somebody as they registered. So you wouldn't have to say, your age and your gender identification when you do it, but if you did, that would go into the response measuring.
So the demographics are only as accurate as what people enter?
Yes, only as accurate as what people are willing to provide, because, it is still valuable to get people's thoughts on things without that demographic information.
And as Commissioner Ballard said, I would also like to hear from communities that have used this and found and ask them what, by engaging a program like this, what information did they collect that they weren't aware of previously? How did this enhance the communications with their residents?
So from the person I spoke with at Mercer Island, what they said was good is that they felt that they attracted people to the engagement process who were not their typical, commission meeting attendees. They weren't the residents who are very engaged and knew about all the engagement opportunities that the city already offered. So it definitely attracted new people into the mix, people who are not as familiar with, just how city government operates.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoff. Thank you, Ms. Fairbairn. Other commissioners, before I go back to Mr. Baller. Go ahead, Commissioner Nikita.
Yeah, a couple questions following up. I think a couple questions already asked that I had actually, so that was good to hear some of those answers. Melissa and Jana, thank you for putting this together. The time commitment as far as committing to the program, obviously there's an introductory fee of some sort to set it up, and then you have a fee for a year. Is that a minimum of a year? Could you do 6 months? Could you do 18 months? How does that work as far as the commitment that you'd have to do on our end?
Right. Those were their standard pricing that the platforms offered. I think if we came back to Bring the Table or citizenlab and said that we were really interested, but we would possibly like to do a 6-month trial, Bring the Table at least indicated that they would be willing to do that. So I think finding out the pricing for that is something that we could do if the commission wants to proceed into engaging one of these platforms.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So it's somewhat flexible, you're thinking.
Yes.
Going back to the question of, you know, what would be the results that people have had, and you said that you've talked to a couple of communities that you thought were similar to what we have here, and they were generally positive from what you gathered. And I understand that you don't want to compare us with Brussels or something. Obviously, it has to be a very aligned type of community. What any opportunity to get reviews or pros and cons or substance from users other than the community that actually put it together, but actually sort of a review, if you will, of the people that use it? I'm just curious if whether or not there's the sense that that the users find it to be positive or not so positive.
I certainly agree that that would be valuable information. I am not sure how we would go about gathering that from residents in other cities.
I have Ms. Eckert raising her hand. Maybe she has some answer for us. Go ahead, Ms. Eckert.
Well, I don't have a specific answer to any of the clients that Melissa talked to and how they've taken it. But what I often do when I go through these and want to see how they would be taken is I often start with one of my teenage kids. And I know that seems strange, but the teenagers and the younger folks, they all live off their phones. They live off the internet, their iPads, etc. And my oldest in particular is very interested in community events. So I put this to him, and his point was, this is great because I don't have time to go to meetings. I'm not going to sit through, no offense, but 3 hours of talk only on one topic that interests me. And they love it because it's exactly what they're used to. They can go on it, they can look at it. And I've heard this also from anyone in their 20s, 30s, even early 40s, especially if you have young children at home, you're not always able to come out and go to the meetings. So it's it's easier for you to get on and answer something like this. And then if you have a question or you want to answer a poll, or if you have a specific comment, you can literally put it on there, look at the location, put your specific comments in there. So I think you do tend to reach a large, or at least a type of resident that you don't get through the usual channels.
Thank you, Ms. Eckert. Mayor Pro Tem Long, go ahead, please.
If I could finish up one more comment, please.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just had one follow-up question. Relative to the question, I think I want to expand on the question of who registers or how do you sign up? I think Commissioner Hoff had asked the question. People that sign up. One of the issues with anything like this is the people that are involved that it doesn't get that it's clear about the people that are participating, and that there's some level of credibility to those people. This is true on sites on media and newspapers and all that. So the question, I guess, comes to, if you sign up to register or sign up to be allowed to participate in whatever capacity that is, how would we know? I think your comment, Melissa, was people put in whatever information they want to put in, and we're sort of dealing with whoever. How do you deal with understanding who would be a resident, who would be a user, say, of the city that's maybe a non-resident, which would be an office worker or someone who comes to town for any type of their entertainment that we have, or what have you. So they're non-residents. And then how do you address people that may want to sign up multiple times, hijack the system, if you will, to put it bluntly, and not be in the carry forward with really allowing us to have an understanding of the clarity of who's participating, but actually come in and sort of vote 100 times, if you will, for one person, which really then challenges the whole validity of the system. So I think in order for it to be credible, there has to be some level of clarity as to people being, being honestly out there and participating in an honest manner. How does that get addressed in something like this? Is it something you can answer?
I know for citizenlab specifically, and I could bring back information for Bring to the Table, but they do have geofencing capabilities. So for certain projects or certain topics, you actually could restrict the comments to people within, the city limits of Birmingham. So that does allow that. I'm not sure what the ability is to limit people from making, dummy accounts, but if they were within that geofence, but I could certainly find that information for you.
Thank you.
Very good question, Commissioner Nikita. Mayor Pro Tem Long, go ahead.
Thank you. I would just like to comment that I think that this has good potential to be used by the city, particularly things like Parks and Rec, the master plan that's done every 4 years, when we extend a great deal of effort to try to duplicate some of the functions that the system has in a more comprehensive way. We have charrettes, we try to do surveys. For the park bond work, we had, posters on the wall, and everybody got colored dots where they could go around the room and vote for the projects that were of most interest to them when we were considering assembling the priority projects for the park bond that will be on the ballot. And so, for all that work, the response is limited to the people who can come and show up personally in the room and who pick up a paper survey somewhere. So I think that there's exciting possibilities for this kind of software for the city for those types of projects. And I would like to go back to perhaps you can't answer the question now, but in the in Mercer Island or in Adena, I think the question that Commissioner Baller had was, who's responsible for managing this at the city level? I think that'd be an important question for us.
So for both of those communities, neither one of them had to hire an extra staff member to run the platforms or to monitor the platforms. Both of them divided up the staff time based on which department was running the project. So if it was a planning project, the planning department ran it. If it was a parks project, the parks staff monitored and responded to it.
Thank you.
Right. Commissioners, any further questions for Ms. Fairbairn or Ms. Ecker? Commissioner Host, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to piggyback on Jana's older son, who I think said all the right things. I think by definition, our biggest problem is communicating with our public. And this sounds so public friendly, and it would allow even teenagers to put in their 2 cents. This is public engagement that we need to do, if only to try to expand everybody's involvement.
Thank you, Commissioner Host.
I don't want any teenagers, so.
Commissioner Hoff?
Yes, I concede a benefit to this depending on the community. I would want to know what the communities who utilize one of these programs, what they did previously and how this enhanced the communication. I happen to think that we do a lot of reaching out to our residents. And I think there has been a lot of input, and we certainly give our residents an opportunity. Since we've been on Zoom, is a fine opportunity for people to stay at home and tune in and give their opinions. but we don't get very many. Because I think for the most part, when people feel strongly about something or do have an opinion, they do make it known. We do get letters, we do get people at our meetings. And in the past, of course, now we're on Zoom, but in the past, when there's an issue that people are concerned about, the commission room could be full. So one of the things that I would want to know is the cities that used it, what was their practice prior to this? Did they have any type of communications tool? Did they let people know what was going on? Did they give updates like we do on the Maple Road project? I think that is a big factor. I also have concerns that there aren't, we can't say there are 50 cities in Michigan that are using this, or in Ohio or nearby. The examples that you gave are few and far between, unless it's true that this is being used all over and I'm not aware of it. But I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing that Medina, Washington was the comparable. So those are concerns that I have before we would move forward on this.
And I can answer the question about nearby cities. It is true that there are no cities in Metro Detroit who are currently using public engagement platforms. But from my research, Bing the Table had about 75 cities in the United States. Many of them were in kind of like the Mountain West area and the Northwest. And then they had even more in Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. So this is a new thing for the Metro Detroit area, but it's not a new thing for other parts of the world and other parts of even the United States. They're implemented at a much higher rate in other parts of the US.
Right. I believe, Commissioner Nikita, go ahead.
I'd just like to, I guess, expand on that question. You mentioned 75 cities in the U.S. plus some in Canada and elsewhere. How about the Great Lakes region, Michigan, or a nearby community or nearby state, Ohio, Indiana, somewhere that's somewhat closer, not just the Metro Detroit area?
Yeah, for the most part, no. There's several cities in Minnesota that are using them. Many cities in Ontario, but it's Canada, but nothing very close to here. It must be a fairly new concept to the upper Midwest.
Thank you, Ms. Fairbairn. I'd like to just to focus on I appreciate your presentation, Ms. Fairbairn, very well studied, very well presented. Thank you so much. I want to make sure that I believe we have some interest from the commissioners to maybe pursue this, as we have many questions. I don't want to be repetitive. I have similar concerns, from cost to control the back end of it, the duplication, the fake profiles. There's many, and we don't want to go into the detailing of it today, but as you see, Ms. Fairbairn, we all had those similar concern and questions. The question that I have right now for the commissioners, do we see an interest in really creating a platform? I'm personally supportive of really digesting more into the situation and really dig in and get more details, and maybe that would benefit our city to increase communication between us and our residents. And I hope as the homework has been done and this has been used in other areas, but again, different cities have different needs. And as Commissioner Hoff stated, what triggered that they needed to use that platform? I believe maybe we need a reason, maybe not. I don't know myself, but I'm so supportive of a communication platform, and especially for something like this that has already been proven in other cities. We just have to make sure that this suits our what we need, and to get more of our concerns and questions addressed and answered. But that's my opinion, and just to not indulge on it tonight, I believe I just want the directions from the commission as do they believe the need of pursuing this so we can bring it back to further discussion as it is an item needed to be discussed further. Commissioner Baller.
Yeah, I think so. I think we could use more, additional reporting from staff on some of these questions. I mean, evaluating new software, new systems is, it's a big deal. It's an undertaking. I think I'd like to hear from more from Jana about how she would use it, and more about how other communities are using it. Maybe a report full of links and quotes, and really hear a lot more depth. This was good as an overview of what they are, but I'd like to see more depth to the reporting from staff to answer the questions that we've presented, and there's many more questions that will come up as you dig deeper into it. So I, for one, would support further research.
Okay. Other commissioners? Commissioner Host, I see your thumbs up.
Well, I want to sound parochial on this. We are now in a new world, and I don't mean just COVID world or Zoom. We're in a new world, and to have younger people engaged, we need to do everything we can to seek them out. And these platforms sound like excellent ways to do it. The world is their oyster.
Thank you, Commissioner Host. Mayor Pro Tem Long?
Yes, I would concur that it would be great to address the questions that Commissioner Nikita and Commissioner Hoff raised about the improvements that cities saw from the use of this platform compared to previous modes of communication, and about issues that they might have had with false profiles and security. I would wonder, though, whether we would be comfortable just confining this research just to bang the table rather than having Melissa look at all of them again. I think that certainly it sounds like we had narrowed it down on her based on Melissa's recommendation to bang the table and citizenlab, and bang the table seems to be the one where she would be able to do the research on, cities in Minnesota and so forth. So if the commission is comfortable, maybe the direction can be just to do further investigation on bang the table.
Yes, Commissioner Hoff, go ahead, please.
I think that that's a good idea to focus on bang the table. And I'm wondering, do they have a staff member bang the table that could make an appearance at one of our meetings to explain, and we can ask the questions directly? So it would be a person who knows about the communities that they service and what those communities did in the form of communications, and to get citizen input. How much citizen input they had before, and how has this improved it? What segments of the population are they drawing out that they didn't get before?
So I see as we have the majority, I want to use that term. I don't want to, Commissioner Nikita, any objection on as to majority are seeing the benefit of really pursuing this opportunity and bring it back with all the options that also Commissioner Hoff's comment, very valid, that hopefully by the next time we'll have something. I'm pretty sure city manager will probably have to say something now, as maybe bring a representative from them to also have the question directed directly to them. But with that, I'll leave it to our city manager if you want to add something. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just think based on the comments tonight, there's clear direction that we move forward with doing further research on the Bang the Table platform. I would just add that in the next week or two, if you come up with additional questions, you forward those to me, and we will try to get those answered in anticipation of bringing this back to the commission when we do have that additional information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks again, Ms. Fairbairn. Well done. Great job, and thank you, Ms. Acker. With that, that concludes this item. We go to item E under new business. Did I hear somebody? No, we're good. Item E, it's a commission discussion on items from our prior meeting. The first item on that was a commissioner report request that was requested by Commissioner Sherman, and I received an email. As I said, he due to travel, he is not able to join us tonight, and he requested that we postpone this item at a future date. With that, we go to the following item, which is the ordinance items, and that was actually requested by Commissioner Host. And with that, Commissioner Host, go ahead.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I appreciate you putting these 4 items on the agenda. But due to the time allowance and due to the fact that the ordinances on heights and setbacks would have to be directed by the staff and probably the planning board, I am willing to postpone these priority items. The other 2, noise and lighting, should be discussed, if only because we have a noise problem and we don't have a residential lighting ordinance. At this time, for respecting the process, tonight I would hope that we would consider just one of those 2, but I'm trying to give direction, you know, on how to proceed with these 4 items. Number 1, the lighting should be shelved because we don't have an ordinance. We need to have research done. I will say this, I've read Ferndale's and Ann Arbor, very comprehensive ordinances. I haven't talked to the people to find out how effective they have been. But tonight, I'd like to have some support for the noise ordinance because we as a commission need to deal with it. And as such, we should certainly review the noise ordinances. So I'd like to make a motion for our next agenda. I request the staff to give us reports on our noise ordinances and what are the parameters for review. I'm praying for a second.
I'll second it so that we can discuss it.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Baller to put things on the agenda. Go ahead, Commissioner Nikita. For the noise ordinance.
Well, noise is a multifaceted thing. I would ask to be more specific as to what is there particularly an area of concern, specifically an area that would be of focus? Is it general, just overall noise? Are we talking about cars, next door neighbors? You know, what exactly, you know, lawn maintenance? I mean, just to put some clarity as to where we're going with this. I think in order to get any good outcome of anything, we have to be very specific as to what we find to be the issue at hand. And I think that our best opportunity to get support with something worthwhile in the end is to be clear up front. And I'm very unclear as to what exactly the issue is at the moment. So if you could clarify that, I'd really appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. Is that a fair question?
It is a very fair question, Commissioner Nikita. I had a conversation with Commissioner Host about it, and I believe, I hope that we have a clear direction on, as you stated, Commissioner Nikita, any ordinance related to anything, you must be specific, otherwise there's no results to be achieved at efficient timing, first of all, and manners the way we want it to be. Commissioner Host, we do believe that. Are you concerned, if you don't mind, be very more specific, is that we, in the summer, as you know, we all just witnessed the Woodward noise on the mufflers. That by itself, it's an ordinance. Are you concerned about, like Commissioner Nikita said, I'm being repetitive. What is the major drive behind the noise? What noise are we specifically talking about? Because we could even talk about lawnmower, and we could change the ordinance that to all be electric tomorrow. For example, I'm not suggesting that. What is it exactly the drive behind this?
Well, certainly what you just said, Mr. Mayor, is very important. The noise, what I would differentiate between commercial noise, which would basically be Woodward Avenue, and residential noise. For example, the city of Ann Arbor has a very comprehensive delineation between those two ordinances and very comprehensively gone through. I've heard from people in the neighborhoods about too much noise, whether it's leaf blowers or high-powered machinery. I think these are real concerns to our residents, and even more so to our residents, the noise on Woodward Avenue. You know, thanks to it being so quiet, I live at least a half a mile away, and I swear they're in my front yard.
Okay.
So I would say two categories, commercial and residential noise.
Commissioner Huff, go ahead, please.
As far as the traffic on Woodward Avenue, we have already addressed that previously at a meeting of this same commission. And Mr. Valentine wrote to Lansing about getting some control over the type of equipment that is used on the cars, because it is very difficult to enforce a decibel limit. And we have already explored that. And until we get some feedback from legislation at the state level that might help us with this about the equipment on these vehicles and the noise that they make. So this has been discussed. I'm not quite sure what else we can do. Now, if there are other options that what we can do, but we were told that we cannot control it by decibels for the automobile noises on Woodward. We discussed this summer. So that's one thing. As far as noise, we do have time frames on when equipment can be used. So we do have some restrictions in place. So I think that narrowing it down is important. And so I asked the same question without saying residential and commercial in terms of what? Is it the neighbor who's having a party and you can hear the band? Or is it the leaf blower in the fall? I'm not quite sure what you're referring to.
Commissioner Hoff, I'm referring to all of that. And are there alternate ordinances that should be in place that makes our police allowed to enforce those laws? I mean, we certainly have to do what MDOT says, but can we make local ordinances that make that decimal problem something that we can enforce, both on Woodward and in the neighborhoods?
Commissioner Baller.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not an expert in this, but I could imagine that there is a spectrum, and that some cities have nothing, and some cities have extremely stringent ordinances, and that we are somewhere in between. But I have no idea what that spectrum looks like and where we stand on it. And so I think that 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 may be something that Commissioner Host is getting at. What do we have? Where does it stand in comparison to other places and to the possibilities of, are we as maybe we're the most lenient city in Michigan? I don't know. Maybe we're the most restrictive city in Michigan. I don't know. So I think, but I think that people are frustrated. I've heard complaints on all of those. I had a call from someone who was upset about a party on Labor Day. I've had calls from people who now are working from home and are upset about leaf blowers interrupting their Zoom meetings. We certainly heard plenty of people upset about the noise from Woodward Avenue, and we had complaints about construction noise. So, I'm not saying we have the power to control all that and make everybody happy. That's not going to happen. But where do we stand? What are the limits of what we can do? And I don't think that's probably a difficult report for staff to come up with, or especially with the assistance of counsel.
Mayor. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Long, go ahead. I would like to hear from Mr. Valentine with his comment to see if this has been done in the past. I believe I had a discussion with him, Commissioner Host, as I mentioned to you. I thought the focus would be, for example, on lighting. And in the past, the city has gone to that process and to check and to see how can we do the lighting ordinance. And it really created a conflict between neighbors and pit neighbor against neighbor. But that doesn't mean we can't look at that. But I'd like to have more of a, again, let me hear from Mayor Pro Tem Long, and then I'm gonna hear from our city manager, and we'll come back to see if there's any further directions to move forward with the noise, as it's really seemed like it's a complex situation. But go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Long.
Thank you. With particular regard to the Woodward Dream Cruise, I think that it would behoove us to take the time we have now before the problem raises its head again next summer, just to do perhaps a survey of other communities up and down Woodward to see whether any of them have any success enforcing a noise ordinance, whether any of them have any better luck with it than we do. I think echoing Commissioner Baller's comments about what does the spectrum look like and what do other communities look like. I think just a review of the other communities up and down Woodward to see if anybody has any ideas about enforceable ordinances and use of technology that helps them deal with the problem perhaps in ways we haven't thought of, would be a useful exercise for us.
Yeah, I do believe, Mayor Pro Tem Long, that we had already, as Commissioner Hoff stated, and I believe a report was given by our chief. We had really a lot of concern, especially those past few months when the Woodward Dream Cruise was canceled. And I do believe, we have Commander Gruey with us also to, if any comment from him on, and there's a lot of homework been done, especially on that muffler and how can you measure the noise. It was almost like near impossible without having something from legislative to a bill, sort of some kind of a bill to pass, and that was the end of it. But again, I'm not saying we're not interested in learning more, but I'm not sure if this is something you can get in the weeks, in the coming weeks, or if it's going to change any of the outcome that we already had before us few weeks back, not a few months back. We've been discussing it. But with that, let me give the floor to our city manager as he would like to say something. Go ahead, Joe.
Mayor. Well, I agree. I don't think it's difficult providing some analysis I think it's helpful, though, that we identify specifically what issues we want to dive into further. We've had, I think, some general discussion this evening, and we've had a couple of specific things identified. But I think if we're coming back to talk about noise, having some additional conversation specifically about what issues we want to look at in terms of, you know, even comparing to other communities. What are the timings of the noise ordinance that are in effect? What are the, you know, what are the issues we're trying to solve would be helpful in trying to obtain that information specifically on some problem that we're trying to address. So I think if we have the assumption leaving this discussion that staff's going to come back with more information, I just want to be clear that we're all in the same page as to what that information is, so that you're getting what you're expecting when we end this conversation. I think there's a couple of specific things which we have already discussed with regard to noise and some of the limitations that we have in enforcing that. And there have been discussions with other communities on this, and everybody is pretty much in the same boat. Some take a little more of a strong-handed approach, which leaves them a little bit more vulnerable to challenges of those citations that they're issuing. And we know based on our legal research that maybe we shouldn't be pursuing those issues that we can't articulately defend in court. So we're enforcing those things that we know we can, and we're going to the legislature trying to find some clarity in the law to give us more authority to enforce some of these issues more aggressively with regards to noise on Woodward. Some of these other issues, again, it would be helpful to have a little bit more discussion on the problem definition so that we can come back to you with more specific information on the specific issues that you have concern with. So I just want to make that point. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Joe. With that, commissioners. Yes, Commissioner Nikita.
Yeah, I expect that it would be wise to get an update on where the city is on noise ordinances. I know we absolutely have reviewed a number of these. As Commissioner Hoff said, just recently we reviewed the Woodward Avenue issue. It's a very difficult thing to nail down. We've had insight into and direction, legal direction to understand what we can and can't do legally. I know we have a decibel meter ordinance where we have what the police look to as far as adjacent noise from, say, a neighbor or something like that. That we do have something in place that is existing. We definitely have hours that we can look at, and we have in place late night, early morning. I went out with the police a couple weeks ago for a ride along. We had 2 calls later in the evening on people having activities in their backyard. It was a nice night. People were out in the backyard, not making overly noisy circumstances, but enough to allow a neighbor to call. And, you know, there's certain guidelines as to what the city has in place to address legally, but I guess clarity for all of us to understand what that is. Early morning, lawn equipment, construction, all that's in place, I think, to some degree. Is it perfect? Probably not. Nothing is. Could it be better? Possibly. I think getting up to speed on exactly what we have in place, which I think is pretty established, but there's probably gaps and maybe some refinement to be done. But I think first step would be to understand the level that we have already in place, which I think is pretty notable, and then we can go from there. So maybe that's the first step, to understand clarity as to what we have already, and then we'll go from there.
Great suggestion, Commissioner Nikita. Any other comments? Just before I support the motion myself, I would like to know, is your motion, again, Commissioner Host, to align to, can you repeat that motion, Alex, please? I just want to know what is the motion is about.
It was a motion to investigate noise ordinances on the next agenda for commercial and residential. And I think you wanted to compare different noise ordinances from neighboring communities.
Okay.
Sufficiently vague, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. I like Commissioner Nikita really personally. The suggestion he made aligns with what Commissioner's host goal is. We're all getting to the same destination here, but it's just I believe we need to be to understand the if that's the right motion or not. But go ahead, Commissioner Nikita. You had a further comment?
Well, I would just the comment about it being on the next agenda. I don't know if I would ask the question of whether or not that's if we have an agenda, if we have space, if we can get stuff together for that. I think that if that's in the motion, I question that we know that we can do such a thing.
You know,
Good.
Commissioner Kita has made a very good point. When I said for the next agenda, I should probably have said for the next available agenda. We request staff give us a report on our noise ordinances and what are the parameters for review. The clarity.
So Commissioner Host, I have to take that as you're amending your motion.
Sadly, yes, for the next available agenda.
Okay. Commissioner Hoff, go ahead, please.
I still am not clear on what's being asked. For the city, for staff to come back with a list of the current noise ordinances?
For our review.
Is that what this motion means? We would like a list of the current ordinances that address noise in the city of Birmingham.
That's how I understood it. Commissioner Host?
No. The purpose of this is to try to discuss ways that we can make our community less noisy and give ordinances that the police can enforce. Namely, the decimal level isn't working because we have no way to take that car somewhere else. But there are other communities that have ordinances that I truly think are enforceable. And as such, we want to give our police the opportunity to issue a ticket that doesn't have to relate to the decimal program that the state maps out.
Commissioner Baller.
Yeah, I just see it as what Commissioner Hoff said and Commissioner Nikita both said, let's take a look at what we've got, but in addition, compare it with some others and tell us where it stands in the realm of possibility. That's how I interpret both his motion and the discussion.
And that's how I interpret it myself, Commissioner Host. The ultimate goal is what you just said, but the motion is literally to, at least for us to first, there's steps to be taken. We need to look at the reports. We need to look at what we have already before we do anything. And that's literally before, and again, it's just the process that we had all agreed on. We discussed an item, we got a majority of the commissioners to say, you know what, it is worth moving forward with this. And this is what we're doing tonight. It is worth looking at that noise ordinance. And then this is what the next step would be, is for our city staff to bring back what we have currently for a noise ordinance. From there, we start acting on, okay, do we need to amend? Do we need to change? Do we need to keep? What's good and what's bad? And Commissioner Host, I see you nodding your head. Are you agreeing to what I'm saying? Because that's what
yes.
Okay, good. So then I would completely withdraw your motion, Commissioner Haas, literally to make things a lot easier. And just, I think the correct motion at this time, if you may allow me just to give you a suggestion here, to direct staff to bring back at the next future agenda our noise ordinance. And that's a clear directions of the next step. And then from there, we exactly take it to the Do you,
Let me rescind my motion first,
okay,
and then I would like to think the mayor has stated it very nicely. And I want to emphasize, I'm not trying to put any pressure on the staff so much as I think that this is an issue that we should address this fall, as the mayor pro tem stated. While we're in a downtime, we ought to take advantage of this lack of noise, so to speak, and address whether we can tighten it up and make it easier for our police to enforce.
sure. And Commissioner Baller, may I ask you to also withdraw your second, just for the easy of the process?
Withdraw my second.
That's great. Alex, will please the clerk repeat the motion so we can all be clear what the motion is, and then we'll have a second, if there is a second, to move on with our agenda, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Mayor Boutros, your motion was a little bit simpler than what I thought Mr. Host was doing.
Okay.
But yours was a motion to have staff give a report on the city's noise ordinances at the next reasonable agenda.
That's it, pretty much it. And then, but that I was suggesting for Commissioner Host to make the motion. I was just giving him the language. So that motion is made by Commissioner Host with my language. And do Commissioner Host, I asked you for the last time, is that your final motion?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We ask staff to bring it to us.
All right. And then seconded by Commissioner Baller. Any other discussion on the motion by the commission? Seeing none. By the public? Seeing none. Will the clerk please take the roll call?
Commissioner Host,
Yes.
Commissioner Baylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Nikita,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman is absent, Mayor Pro Tem Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoff,
Yes.
Mayor Boutros.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, with that, we go to our last item under new business is the commission items for future discussion. Commissioner Nikita.
Yeah, I just have I think it's a relatively simple question on whether this is something that we would want to take up. In response to the communications from Mr. Kevin Denha, he's questioning the zoning in a couple of our perimeter area, an area that I think we studied extensively called the transitional zoning. That's the area where the focus of his question in a building that he controls or owns is East Lincoln at Adams. And his question, I think, is one that probably requires some level of, I guess, review, if anything, regarding zoning of O and B properties and whether or not they should be considered transitional zoning and or upgraded to our TZ, which we did a couple years back. And for whatever reason, and Jana, I'm sure knows much more about the details than I do. And I'm sure just bringing up TZ, she's rolling her eyes at me just to bring it up. But I think the question is a valid one of whether or not, why the O and the B in some areas, specifically this one, wasn't altered in a TZ, and maybe it is not allowing for flexibility enough to be the best situation for leasing. So it's something that that when I read Mr. Denha's letter, I thought that was a valid question, and I would only ask to what to do with that, I guess, if for anything, if it needs to come back on an agenda for consideration to have a discussion about, or if it maybe there's some direction to have the planning board take a look at it. I'm not sure we're the best way to go about it, but I think there's some valid questions, and it's worthy of taking a review on it. Lastly, I'll just say, just for the record and full disclosure, I know Mr. Denha personally. I've worked with him in the past, meaning he's been a client of mine in the past. I'm currently not doing anything with him that I'm under contract with. So I don't want to, I just want to be clear and upfront about that. But I do think that he has a valid concern to consider. And I'm open for where, I guess, maybe Mr. Mayor, Joe, Mr. Valentine, or Ms. Eckert can give us some thoughts. If it needs to come back on the agenda, that might be something to consider. And that's why I'm bringing it up now under item F. If it's something staff would take on, I'm not sure. So I'm throwing that out as a consideration.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Jenna, though, Ms. Eckert, if you don't mind, just to answer, if you can, why was this area left behind? Can you address that?
Well, that's a tricky question because I don't necessarily think it's been left behind. I think those properties were some of them that were considered. I think the issues that Mr. Denha is raising, there's a couple of them. One is the health and fitness issue, and he came to a joint meeting a couple of years ago and raised this same issue about yoga studios and where they're permitted, and they're pretty well limited to a few zone districts in the city. So that's one issue. Those were one of the uses that we struggled with a lot during the transitional zoning process, and we did not end up allowing health and fitness in the transitional zones. The second issue has come up with the on-premise consumption of alcohol. Recently, there's been a couple of locations that are zoned O2 that people have wanted to sell beer and wine or other alcoholic beverages, and it specifically does not allow that in the zoning ordinance. Why that wasn't added in, I don't know. My only guess would be that a lot of the O2 properties were directly adjacent to residential, and so the thinking maybe was, instead of having licensed establishments or facilities that sell liquor, we would stick to a little less intrusive uses, perhaps, such as office, which would be 9 to 5 and go home. I'm not sure what he's dealing with or mentioning when he talks about current parking requirements. I'm not sure what the issue is there. I will say that the plaza on Lincoln, 1120 East Lincoln, I don't believe that was discussed for the transitional zoning. Several of the other ones, well, the North Old Woodward ones anyways, a couple of them were, but the ones on Woodward were not. So why some of them were put at O2 and why they weren't, I don't know. That's back in the 60s when that was done. I guess we could do a little more investigation on each of these parcels and try to track it, but I don't know the answer off the top of my head as to why they were left the way they were.
Thank you, Jenna. I didn't mean to sound like left behind, but in a sense, maybe it is. If there's no objection from other commissioners, Commissioner Nikita made a valid point here. I mean, maybe it's just we didn't discuss it since the 60s. Maybe it's time to look at it. But I'll have our city manager also address something. Maybe he's looking he'd like to address something. But go ahead, Mr. Valentine.
The only thing I would add is if there's unanimous consent from the commission, we'll bring this back for future discussion at a subsequent meeting.
I can make that motion if that's, I mean, I just want a direction if that's the best way to go, but
I mean, if there's no objection, Commissioner Nikita, you don't need a motion, but if you even feel like address, whatever, but I see a hand before, go ahead, Commissioner Host. I don't want to cut you off.
I want to say thanks to Commissioner Ballard talking to that gentleman. I talked to him as well. I don't know him, but it sounded like he had legitimate concerns all over his properties. And as such, I'm very pleased that Commissioner Nikita brought up at least that little segment of the problem. I think it would be worthwhile for us to look at it because we have to help our landlords lease their land, lease their property.
Right. Commissioner Baller, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm all for discussing it. Right now, we have a one-page letter from the property owner, and And I mean, I think it's an opportunity for him to invite him and any other property owners to come in and you know, he's highlighted 2 or 3 issues that we're not really even 100% clear on what he's saying. So, I mean, I like the fact that he reached out, and I think we ought to reciprocate by saying, yeah, we're interested. Come on in, talk to us, bring as many other property owners as you can muster, and let's have a conversation, a workshop, if you will, and try to figure out, like Commissioner Host said, you know, what do we need? What do we need to do to help you guys that's within reason that makes everybody happy?
I mean, again, this is, Commissioner Ball, just to clarify, this is not, we're doing that because of an individual, but it's because it's something been addressed to us to really, that an eye-opening to us that area hasn't been looked at for a while. And I think this is the opportunity that Mr. Nikita is looking at. And let's be clear then, I think we have a majority, Mr. Nikita, that would like, and we have a clear direction to the city manager what needs to be done next. But Commissioner Nikita, do you wish to make a motion, or?
Yeah, just
Go ahead.
yeah, sure. Concurrent with item F, which is just simply bringing this up for discussion whether or not we should do it. We're not really here to discuss it, right?
Correct.
So, I mean,
Correct.
I just brought it up. I think it's worthy of having consideration to go forward with. So I would make the motion to bring it up at an upcoming agenda whenever it's available, to have consideration for moving it forward in some capacity.
Great, very clear. And seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Long. Any further discussion on the motion? None? Public? Mr. Bloom, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. We have a motion to bring an item for
Right.
future discussion. Go ahead, Mr. Bloom.
So I'm aware of this letter. If Dorothy Conrad were at this meeting, and if she knew about this meeting, she'd be running over here and she would be giving every one of you an extremely stern history lesson and a lecture. Okay. So I would request anyone on the commission that doesn't know what's going on to take a look at the master plan from the last master plan. It's still supposed to be the master plan until we have the new one from early 1980. And what that master plan did was it said the downtown was supposed to be the downtown. The neighborhoods were supposed to be the neighborhoods.
Mr. Bloom.
Buffer zone.
If you don't mind.
No, I do mind, actually. I'm sorry. I do mind.
I have to let you know, your comment should be on a motion that all what we're doing today is a future item to be discussed. We're not.
I'm getting to that.
Tonight.
I'm getting to that, Mr. Mayor.
You're giving me history, Mr. Bloom. That's not the
if we're going to be discussing this, then the reason that these areas were O2 was because they were supposed to be buffers from the neighborhoods. So if we're going to have this item as a discussion item, I would ask Jana Ecker to make sure that every single neighborhood affected by potential rezoning of these properties be notified. Every homeowner and neighborhood association be notified so that they can be at these meetings and participate and have a say in how their neighborhood might be rezoned.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. We're not even there yet. This is, again,
if you're going to discuss it, then invite the people that are going to be affected by discussing it, not the business owner that wants to make more money by rezoning the property. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bloom. All right, with that, any further public comment? None? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Nikita,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman, absent, Commissioner Baller,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoff,
Yes.
Commissioner Host.
Yes.
Mayor Boutros.
Yes, thank you, clerk. That conclude our new business for this agenda. We go to the next item, which is item removed from consent agenda. We have none. We already took care of that. Communications. We just addressed a letter that we received from Kevin Denha. I am not sure if Mr. Denha or any representative there that would like to say anything as we just addressed the situation. I don't see anybody. All right, anyone? Great. With that, we go to reports. We have commissioner reports, commissioner comments. Any comments from the commissioner? Mayor Pro Tem Long.
Yes, I would just like to note how pleased I am that City Clerk Designee Bingham has been so wonderful in providing us with commission packets consistently on Thursdays for the last several meetings, and to note how helpful that is.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Long. We'll take additional compliments all night. Commissioner Host, go ahead.
I just want to mention that at some point, I think we ought to talk about separating, have the staff tell us how we might be able to separate the water from the sewer. I've had plenty of neighbors say that their bills this past quarter were 4 digits over $1,000.
Thank you for your comment, Commissioner Host. Any additional comments from the commissioners? None. We move on to advisory boards, committees, commission reports and agendas, legislation, city staff. We have a police department traffic citation analysis submitted by our chief, Mark Clements. Any questions on that in the commission? See none. City staff, item 2, we have a terminating Vista's recommendations, framework and goal timelines submitted by our planning director, Jenna Ecker. Any questions on that by the commission to Jenna? Commissioner Hoff, go ahead, please.
It's not a question. I think it's very good, but I thought it was laid out very well, establishing the priorities. But one thing that I didn't see anywhere that I would certainly think we should consider is to try to generate some private contributions for artwork. This commission approves a lot of projects in Birmingham, a lot of development downtown, and that's where we want the artwork. And it seems to me that we should be able to get some private contributions. There's a list on here of funds that need to be expended from the city budget for either installing the artwork or hiring someone to install it, for a stipend to the artist. And nowhere do I see any possibility of raising funds privately to enhance the city. And I would like to suggest that.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Long.
Yes, please, if I could beg your forgiveness, Mayor Boutros, I did not respond quickly enough when you brought up the police traffic citation analysis submitted by Chief Clements, because I did have a few questions about that, if there's someone here to address them this evening.
If you don't mind, Mayor Pro Tem Long, let's just wrap up the discussion on the vistas and I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the vistas by the commissioners? Mr. Cohen or Mr. Acker, do you have anything to add to Commissioner Common, to Commissioner Hoff? Nope.
No, I think we can.
Okay.
Including some opportunities for private contribution.
All right, Commissioner Hoff, the answer that I got, that we will be looking into some private contribution.
Wait,
And
I
with that, Mayor Pro-
lost you.
Oh, I said our city manager had stated that we will be looking at ways to hopefully explore and get some private contributions.
Thank you.
Yes. On that line, Commissioner Hoff, I really also, that's a good suggestion. I'd like to make a comment myself. You can also, on that line of private contribution, a lot of people, when you incentivize them that you will have your name on such a thing, there'll be a lot of people interested in donating, and pretty much you get their attention, that their name will be on that. certain piece or whatever we do in the city, that will get some attention, but that's just my comment on exactly to echo Commissioner Hoff point. With that, I think any further discussion on the vistas? No? Oh, I have Miss Barbara Heller. Go ahead, please.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so the Public Arts Board has gotten several sculptures donated. We have and we also have a form up to 25,000. We have a form that every time we give a lecture, that we ask for donations. And so we've been working very hard, and you can see how many sculptures have actually been donated to the city since we started this program. It's not that, and there's, anyway, so that is one side of it. Yes, we do always ask for donations, and we do have a form that's got like 5 different levels to put your name on it, to be a sponsor, etc.
Thank you for the clarification, Ms. Heller. We appreciate your comment. Okay, with that, we will come back to you, Mayor Pro Tem Long, and with your question, do you have a question for the our chief or Commander Gruey with us?
Yes, and my apologies for interrupting the Vistas discussion. I thought it was concluded, and that was obviously incorrect. As far as the police traffic citation report, first of all, I'd like to thank the Chief Clemens and Commander Gruey for their work on this. This report was the result of an inquiry that the commissioners had several months ago about whether there was any knowledge that traffic stops or traffic citations were disproportionately issued in Birmingham based on race. Early on, we were told that the city did not collect that data, the race data. So I have several questions. The first one, Mayor Boutros, would be, is the data on race that was reported in, for example, Chart B, Birmingham Police Department citations by race, is that data that was actually collected by the city, or is that data that's populated by the Clemens database after those citations are entered in? And so what is the origin of the race data that's reported in Chart B?
Commander Gruey, please, if you can answer that question.
Yes, absolutely. The numbers that we were able to pull were through the Clemens program themselves. It is a searchable field on there. It is not something that's regularly ran by the police department. So it's not a report that we keep, but they do have search functions within the Clemens program, ticket program, that we're able to pull these numbers.
So if I may ask a follow-up, who originally enters that data about the citation into Clemens? Is it the Birmingham Police, or is that data that exists if someone has a record in Clemens already?
So each citation is entered by the officer issuing that citation. It's then the computer program itself that tracks that information and stores that.
So the officer is entering race data on citations when they are issued?
That's correct. Sometimes it's automatically entered based on the driver's license. When an officer runs an ops code, the operator's license, sometimes that information is contained in there and gets automatically imported into the ticket program. And sometimes the officer has to select it themselves.
Thank you. Thank you. If I may continue, Mayor Boutros?
Go ahead.
I think that the report was very interesting, but I'm not sure that we can actually draw the conclusion that our original inquiry asked for about whether there are disproportionate traffic stops and traffic citations in Birmingham, because traffic stops are not reported here. We only have citations. So my next question would be is there data anywhere about traffic stops in addition to citations, such as was just reported for Oakland County by the Michigan State Police?
So there is not. When the officer makes a contact on a regular traffic stop, unless they issue a written warning or an actual citation, there is no record of that stop or the race of that driver.
Thank you. And you provided a lot of information weighted by census for Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne County about the distribution of various ethnic populations for the 2010 census. And again, in the report that was just released, there's more recent data for the 2018 and 19 census. And then you listed chart D, the citations issued by city. And I would note though that that only one of the cities listed in those representative cities is not in Oakland County. So while our performance in chart A and chart B looks not too bad, the tickets issued for those cities are primarily Oakland County cities. Only Detroit only is the only non-Oakland County city listed. There are no Macomb County cities listed. And so it is possible that there might be some disproportionate citations issued. It's very hard, obviously, when we're monitoring Woodward Avenue. So I would be interested if there's further data we can analyze that would get us closer to that question. And I would also be interested in knowing where the other tickets that were not listed in chart D are issued. The tickets you say that in 2019, there were 7,198 total citations issued, but the representative cities here only total 65% of that number. So is there a large block of tickets in different cities that you haven't reported here? Is there a way to get closer to answering the question about whether citations are issued disproportionately?
So to answer your first question, as far as where the other citations are issued, to pull up all 7,000 tickets individually and look at what city the resident or the driver was, that would take a lot of time, and it would be an extremely long report.
Okay.
A lot of citations we issue are to people from outside the country, outside the state, and all over the state of Michigan. So what we did here when we added the cities that the citations were issued to were all the cities bordering the city of Birmingham. And then we looked at the two largest cities that are along the Woodward corridor, which is why we added Detroit and the city of Pontiac. So that's what that chart represents there. As far as your second question, to look at the numbers, I mean, I think when we look at the chart B, which talks about the issues that were issued, or citations that were issued by race, that includes all those tickets, regardless of what city or what jurisdiction that person lives in. So I think that does show, our portions of citations and how they were issued and issued appropriately.
Thank you. That's the rationale for chart D is interesting and appropriate.
Thank you, Mayor Protem. Thank you, Commander Gruey. With that, Commissioner Baller, you got something?
Yeah, I was interested in the, if you could talk more, and again, thank you for the information. There's nothing I'd like to do more than prove statistically that the Birmingham Police Department is not disproportionately targeting Black drivers. But we're not, none of us here are very good at statistical analysis. So I guess we just have to live with that for now. I was particularly interested in the fact, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we have one Black officer out of 33, was it?
That's correct.
Yeah. Can you talk more about our recruitment efforts and whether we are, whether we're trying to recruit more officers of color, whether you think that would be a good thing? Just address the issue, if it's even an issue.
Commissioner Baller, Commander Gruey, I just want to make sure that we keep it to not to further discuss this, as this is not a discussion item. It's more a question about a report that been presented to us. Commissioner Baller, if you don't mind, keep your question directed to the exactly report that was given to us. Further,
The report given to us indicated that we have one black officer out of 33. Now, you want me to ask a specific question about that?
if you have a question,
Does our command
yes,
think that's okay?
yes, go ahead.
Thank
I mean,
I'll,
I'd rather have him just discuss it, but you're forcing.
I think Commander Greer would agree that, the challenges we have with attracting a diverse workforce in certain areas is a challenge. There's no question about it. We do have efforts that we put in place to try to broaden our pool of applicants when we go through the process of hiring. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. Certain fields, there are hurdles to expanding with diversity. And, we see that in not only us, but a lot of the other communities you'll see within Oakland County have the challenges of trying to increase the diversity within their workforce. So it's an ongoing effort. There are, certain things we'll try to do to broaden that pool. We work with the NAACP offices on our recruitments, and we try to, get into areas that we normally wouldn't get in with the normal recruitment efforts that we put forward. We have now started going on to different campuses to try to reach out to applicants that are in these programs and try to encourage them at that early stage to look at Birmingham as an option if they normally wouldn't, as a place to come and work. So there's a kind of a one-on-one approach that we're starting to take now, and going forward, I think we'll see more of that. But there's no question that, expanding diversity in certain areas, especially here in Oakland County, with regard to law enforcement, can be a challenge. So it is one of the things we're cognizant of, and we continue to work at and try to broaden our pool as we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would just add the comment that, when you did your statistical analysis, you made the very accurate assertion that we're not just policing Birmingham, we're policing, a diverse population. And so thank you, Manager Valentine, for that explanation. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Baller. Any other questions on the report? Seeing none. Thank you, Commander Gruey. Thank you to all the police department for all what they do, sacrificing for us, for our children, and for everybody that crossed Woodward and doing their best possible to do what's right. I can't thank you enough, and your team. With that, I'd like to say good evening. We finished the meeting before 10, and I hope to continue that momentum that we finish our meetings before 10 every time. Thank you, guys. We've been efficient and professional, and I appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful night. Meeting adjourned.